All my life, I've tried to be true to myself and to my music. I think it's a process of learning who you are through your music and learning about the music through experience.
So learning is at the core of your art.
Yes, I would say so. I think learning, the creative process is very closely tied to the learning process, especially for performing art, for sure. My first instrument was the piano. I was very young when I started piano, but I started recorder in school like everybody else in the third grade. But I just fell in love with the instrument and was immediately drawn to it. I don't think I was even aware of it. I was a child, but I very much enjoyed it. I would end up with all the solos in the school concerts, and one thing led to another. I would bring my recorder to my piano lessons and ask my piano teacher to accompany me. And he had the wherewithal, fortunately, to say to my parents, well, what she really wants is recorder lessons. So
we were talking about learning.
Mm-hmm.
What is your judgment now on the way you've been taught?
Yeah. Somebody was doing something right, because I don't think I would have been as... and I still remember my school recorder teacher. She must have done something right, because she inspired me to love the instrument. One is attracted to a certain kind of sound very often. When parents ask me what their child should study, what instrument their child should study, I really try to encourage them to have the child determine that. If the child says, I want to learn guitar, investigate that. Is that for real? Or is, if they're really attracted to that sound and that instrument, you have a much better chance that the child is going to succeed on that instrument than if you thrust a violin in their hands or a piano.
What makes a good teacher?
This is probably true of just about anything, but in music, I think a good teacher is someone who inspires their student to love the subject or the craft, somewhat by demonstration, somewhat by, sharing their own love and their own craft, but also very much it's a question of inspiring the student to find their own way, inspiring the student to find their own sound, to find their own passions, because within music there are so many different directions in which one can go. And I think a good teacher will probably inspire their student to be a good teacher as well. So it's a somewhat rare combination. I think it's about accomplishment and fulfillment. I think it's also about the process. I think it's about the research, and I don't mean that necessarily in an academic way, but about searching for things. Whether it's a musical sound or a musical idea, a musical thought, a musical collaboration, searching for a collaboration, searching for your role as a musician. I think it's about the search as well. It's about the process, in addition to the accomplishment.
Technically, your instrument is about breathing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn to develop your breath control?
I think it was firstly at the conservatory, when I was already a conservatory student, that I remember consciously working on it. But there was another phase in my life where I was having some technical problems. And one of my colleagues here, this is an example of learning from one's colleagues. One of my colleagues said it was actually a problem of articulation. So it wasn't breathing, I thought. It was about articulating the notes, which on a wind instrument you do with your tongue. And he said, it's not about articulation, it's about breathing. And I was very skeptical. I didn't believe him at all. And then we went further into discussion, and he introduced me to a methodology that was developed by a actually tuba player of Chicago Symphony by the name of Arnold Jacobs, who developed, because of his own physical ailments, actually he only had one lung and he played bass tuba, which, as you can imagine, requires a lot of air. So he developed ways of addressing airflow and sound production that I found completely inspirational. And I used it myself, and I also introduced my students to it.
What did you learn that was so inspirational?
It was technical, but I think that it enabled me to really find the relationship between breath and sound and phrasing and musical expression, which is so very important.
Tell me more about that. That's the core of music.
It's very much about moving the air and about the air becoming the phrase, becoming the music. So, I could go more into technicalities, but I think that's the essence of it. And in fact, this methodology uses instruments, they're medical devices very often, to create external feedback so that you're not intellectually concentrating on what muscles you're using, but you're equating certain physical movements with something that you see, with some external feedback, so that you can create new habits, essentially, and equate then the sound that you're making with the feeling that you have.
So basically you have to breathe in a new way.
Yeah, I do think so, because the way we use breath in sort of normal life is quite different from the way you use breath in playing an instrument or in singing. We're really using every possible way to breathe out, to breathe in and to blow out. So in other words, just sitting here talking to each other, we're breathing, we're not thinking about it. There's all sorts of involuntary breathing. If we weren't doing it, we wouldn't be alive. There's a type of breathing that you use where you're doing aerobic activity. Again, we don't think about it, but it's a very different kind of breath that you're using when you're running. For a musical instrument and for singing, we need to learn how to use the entire apparatus in a conscious way, I would say, but conscious in that you're using it for a purpose, to create this sound. And that's what I hadn't really thought about so much until I was having technical problems and had to think some more about it.
What do you feel when you breathe in this way?
Well, there's breathing and there's blowing. There's breathing in, and then there's blowing out or using the air that we've taken in. What do I feel? It's very, it's hard work, but it's very pleasing at the same time.
Do you feel more connected with yourself, breathing this way?
Yes, in a sense, and definitely I feel more connected to the music. There's incredible joy in knowing that musical phrase or that musical piece is coming alive through my breath. I sort of alluded to it before. I mean, that's one of the great beauties of a performing art. I feel that I can make music by myself. I do entire recitals completely by myself. I enjoy doing that. But I feel that in a good performance, if you're connecting to other really fine musicians, that it's exponential. How much more exciting that performance can be. To me personally, and to the audience. I do believe that. I mean, there's definitely, a great pianist can play solo music all by themselves, and it can be an extraordinary experience. You literally feel as if you are breathing life into a musical phrase. But there's something very special about the act of making music together with other people. It's a very...
Sharing the same breathing?
Well, yeah. If you consider breathing to be the musical phrase, then yes. Every instrument has a different way of producing that phrase.
How do you prepare yourself before performing on stage?
Every situation is different. If you're performing together with a lot of people, there's that balance between finding your own quiet or finding your own whatever quiet you need for preparation and still being available to the people that you're about to perform with. Everybody's different. I generally, before, I will try to block out the rest of my life, that's for sure, because life, really, the details of life tend to, especially nowadays with our devices on all the time, they impose themselves, and I try to find quiet. But I don't have rituals. Some people have rituals. I'll go to my breath. I'll breathe deeply and mostly just try to focus by being in the moment.
So, preparing yourself just before performing on stage, your body is your first instrument.
That's an astute point, actually, that I'm really trying to find my own breath and my own instrument rather than it's not the object, but it's coming from inside of me.
What kind of experience are you looking for yourself when you're performing on stage?
I'm not sure that I'm looking for anything when I perform, particularly. I'm looking to share with whoever is there to listen to me, for sure. And there's something very special about the sort of unquantifiable or response that you get from the audience. I can't quantify it, I can't qualify it, but there's something electric and quite magical about, what the sensation that we get as performers, knowing that there are people listening to us, that there are people there in the moment for us, and then it's gone.
How would you describe your relationship with the space when you're performing on stage?
It's actually quite strong, sometimes unfortunately, because we don't always have the opportunity to perform in the best space. I feel like I'm playing against an acoustic if there's no inspiration in the acoustic.
How do you prepare yourself to play like this?
It's difficult. Sometimes it's really difficult to even want to perform. And there, very often, that's when the audience can come in. That's when it can become a dialogue, in a sense. So if you're in an acoustic where the acoustic is giving you absolutely nothing, it's not giving you anything acoustically, but it's also not giving you anything as a beautiful space or as a historical space. So it's giving you nothing. That's when, you can be playing in a black box with a dry acoustic if you've got an audience of 10 that are really taken with what you're doing. That's when it can become a dialogue and they can inspire you, I think.
I'm gonna leave the room. Please keep the microphone and add whatever you want to the interview.
I'm an early music specialist, which is really Western European music. And I feel that my musicianship became stronger once I was informed by other traditions of music that I became interested in. And that has led me also to travel more widely and share my music with people in very far off places, which has again enriched me as a person immensely. I'm finished now.